Hello, and welcome once again to the very croaky voiced, redacted. No, I'm not going to do the edit thing because I said that I wouldn't on here. So I'm sorry, you're just going to have to get croaky voiced me this morning. Um, Welcome to Redacted Nuisance. I'm Dr. J, used they as a pronoun, suffered dreadfully from hay fever. And just as I decided to talk, I had one of those little hay fever moments. Which, because when you live alone you don't talk, you don't realise you're about to have. So, welcome to Redacted Nuisance. 10 to 15 minutes of unmitigated rambling by me, Dr. J, that is put up on Tinternet without any editing. I don't even listen back to it. All I do is, as I record it, I just keep an eye on the levels and make sure that I'm not doing stuff to make the levels really, really bad. Otherwise, this is done off the cuff without any real thoughts. I created this because I used to do a show for Trans Radio UK, which is very, very cool, and you should listen to it. Not my show, though, the radio station, and I did a little pop-up show called Queer Nuisance, where I would play music and do insert little rants and bits and pieces. And as my mental health took a bit of a dive, as it does, because we live in a society and an environment that means that some of us have CPTSD from the bullying we've experienced. Some of us just the pressures of the world build up on us, and even the things that we enjoy doing, like this, become too difficult for us to do, and we have to kind of go, no. And it became too difficult, not for the ranting. That was the stuff that I could do quite easily. And also putting the music together was also quite easy. It was trying to do things like get it down to exactly the number of minutes that it needed to be, to make sure that I remembered all the songs that I played and put them in the spreadsheet and all of the things like that. And it became too much, so I had to drop it. And after that, I kept thinking about picking it back up again, but I didn't want to restart it and have other people dependent on me to do it. And I felt really bad for Trans Radio UK because they put effort into me, they put trust in me, I put trust and effort into them, and I just couldn't keep it up. My brain's not been good for like about a year and a half or more. I'm saying that with that. You could probably say my brain's not been good for most of my life. In the current situation, it's been on a slow decline with a few real crashes, and then I've pulled my way out of it and just never been able to get myself out of not a great place. And that's tricky, and that's a really hard thing to recognize, that you can put in all the effort, you can put in all the work, you can do all the self-reflection, you can do all of your calming, you can do all of your meditation, your mindfulness, the things that you do to give yourself joy, the things that you do to make yourself feel good, and you can still have really bad mental health. It is not just up to you. It is also up to the environment around you. We live, those of us who are in the UK, I'm assuming, well, and in the US and pretty much in so many other countries, we are under so much pressure. I won't, constantly, is it constant? Is it a constant craving? Is it, or is it just we come under pressure and then we adapt to the new level of pressure, and then more pressure comes in and we adapt to the new level of pressure, and we don't recognize just quite how bad we are getting until we suddenly hit rock bottom. So, and often there is nothing personally that you can do. You are doing everything possible. You are not ignoring this. You are taking proactive ways of dealing with this. And the pressure is literally too much. And sometimes And I've just had to do this, and I'm currently in the middle of being signed off from work because it reached the point where I could not cope. There was nothing that could be done that I could personally do to continue to cope with the situations. I needed a complete break from it. I needed a complete break from at least one of the pieces, and the one that I could control was work. I could take a break from work, which I'm on at the moment, so that I could spend some time not having to deal with at least one of the pressures on me. I could then work with the other 4 or 5 or 6 other things that were putting pressure on me, and get on top of those and get myself into the space where when I go back to work, I can go, I am ready to take on this extra pressure that work brings in as well. Um, and that's a really, really hard thing to sit down and say. I'm, as someone who, I think one of my exes said, Jay is driven. I am driven. I do want to succeed, and that is part of a reaction to the bullying and the pressures that were put on me as a kid, and the, I'm going to call it for what it was, the edge of conversion therapy. So I didn't get any of the hardcore conversion therapy that a lot of people report for being queer. I got I got parts of it, and I got prayed over, I got called out, I got all of the things that you get in a conservative Christian environment when you are the child who believes in evolution, when you are the child who asks questions, when you are the child who wants to understand how to reconcile the theory of evolution with what you're being taught in church, and how to put that all together, and how to understand it, and how to rationalize it. And that was not something that the church that I belonged to was able to understand. They didn't. So, to be completely honest, I think everyone in my childhood knew that I was queer, or I was different. I was different, and that difference was always recognized, but what that difference was never recognized. So people knew that I was different, but people did not know what to label that difference. I didn't know that it was about sexuality and gender, and gender identities and things like that. They just knew that I was not as advertised. Advertised was this pretty little Christian girl with long blonde hair and beautiful handmade dresses. And that was the sort of well-behaved, obedient person that I should be. And when I wasn't that, that was difficult for everybody because nobody knew how to deal with it. And those pressures, and my way of reacting to that was to just throw myself into everything. Because if I was great over here, if I was good with schoolwork, I was praised, and the better I was with schoolwork, the further I got, the more I was praised, but also the more I could see that that was a way out of that situation. If I hesitate to think of what it would have been like for me if I hadn't had that escape into schoolwork, if I hadn't had those escapes into books, if I hadn't been a particularly good reader, somebody who could just sit down and get absorbed into books. So the outcome of that is that when I'm under pressure, when I'm feeling that pressure that is coming on me, when I'm feeling like I'm not achieving, when I'm feeling my mental health slip, my first reaction is to double down on everything that I do and try to do it as good as possible. This is not the best coping strategy when you're under a lot of pressure, and that's part of... I literally broke so badly that I've just had to go, I can't. I have signed off work, like I said a bit earlier, simply because I was having such panic attacks and I could not get them under control. and I was having panic attacks at everything, because when you've got CPTSD and you're trying your best to get through it, and everything is telling you that you need to try harder and do better and do better and do better, and you can't because you're in such panic all of the time. Pardon me, it's an impossible situation to be in, and you just need to take time out. So I'm in the process of taking time out. So what is this waffle about? Well, I was going to talk about why this podcast existed, is one of the things that I had on there. And I think one of the reasons it exists is part of that pushing and doubling down and wanting to do things well. I want to do a really good podcast. I want to have people listen and, I don't know, find interesting things that I say, or find inspiration, be inspired by what I say, think that what I say has allowed them to see the world in a different way, whether it's to understand my identity and other trans identities more, whether it's to understand their own lived realities, whether it's to go, oh, this person sounds remarkably like me. This person who has a very different experience, a very different accent, a very different life, actually is very much like me. And in seeing that connection, our differences become much less. I don't know if that's an amazing reason for having a podcast. I'm not a right-wing man. I'm not going to make tons of money. I don't expect this to make money. I would love to have, if I get 10 listeners, I will be stunned. If I get enough, if I have someone listen to this and go, actually, that really helped. This waffling 15 minutes on this random piece actually helped me, because I heard in there a piece of myself reflected back. I heard in there a slightly different way of coping with the situation that I've got. I heard in there somebody who's going through a similar thing to me, or I heard in there somebody who I relate to and in so many ways, and I've never thought about this pressure on them or this part of their life, and oh my God, I am now trying to understand what other parts of people's lives that I've missed. These are all the things that I would love to get out of this. And I'm not sure whether this format of just, 10 to 15 minutes of unedited rambling that doesn't even get listened back to before I publish it, that's full of coughs and sneezes and hay fever and lots of ums and my brain wandering around the topic, because CPTSD, complex PTSD, is an interesting neurospice to have. And I have a very clear diagnosis of it. And what I find fascinating is it's almost the Uber diagnosis engine. When people look at me and reflect on my experiences and what I talk about and the things that I struggle with sometimes, there are people who will say, oh, you sound remarkably like you've got autism. And there are other people who will say, you sound remarkably like you have ADHD. What I have is symptoms and behaviours and coping mechanisms and struggles that interlink with both of those neurospices quite well. When my brain is quiet, I do not have those same things. And this was a little light bulb moment that I had several years back when I was talking with a friend about how when my brain was quiet, particular thoughts didn't happen, particular patterns didn't happen inside my head. And they, quite autistic, said, oh, that never happens with me. And we had a very quick conversation, and I realized the difference between my neurospice and their neurospice is that a lot of my neurospice is derived around anxiety, derived around my experience of anxiety, my my anxiety, my hypervigilance, my reactions to everything are often PTSD, and the way that I cope with those is calming myself down, becoming as calm as possible, understanding when I'm triggered, understanding what the trigger is, calming my body back down again. All of those things is what I do all the time to leave the house. And a lot of neurospicy people don't have that advantage of being able to calm themselves down. Their brain is constantly in that state. And I have an advantage where if I can get myself calm, I can have a slightly easier internal ride through life. The calmer I am, the more relaxed I am, the easier the world is for me to deal with. I'm going to leave this one here, and I will be back. This is number 11. I'm actually quite pleased with how these are going, and there will be more. Like, subscribe, do whatever, I don't care. Thank you for listening, though. I really, really do thank you, and I hope this little bit of rambling has been useful in some way. Cheers.